In the underworld of narcotics, few names have sparked as much fear as Griselda Blanco. Dubbed the cocaine godmother, Griselda became synonymous with the cocaine trade in the 70s and 80s, leaving behind a legacy painted in blood and white powder. Griselda, also known as La Madrina, the Black Widow, and the Queen of Narco-Trafficking, was not just a drug lord, but a pioneer in a male-dominated underworld. Her tale begins in the impoverished streets of Colombia, where she was born into a world that offered few escapes from poverty. Yet, through sheer ruthlessness and an uncanny ability to outmaneuver both rivals and the law, Griselda carved a path that would lead her to become one of the most powerful and feared figures in the world of narcotics. However, her criminal activities would eventually catch up to her, serving as a stark reminder that the law catches up to all, no matter how untouchable they may seem. Griselda's story begins in Colombia. Born on February 15, 1943, she was raised in the impoverished neighborhoods of Medellin in the middle of a brutal civic conflict period. La Violencia, which lasted from 1948 to 1958, tore through the countryside and had profound economic effects on Colombia, exacerbating existing inequalities and stunting the nation's economic development. Griselda's upbringing during this troubled civic period meant an early exposure to crimes as a means of survival and power. The harsh realities of her environment demanded toughness and cunning, characteristics that Griselda would develop very early on. At the age of only 11, a chilling act would foreshadow her infamous career to come. Reports allege that Griselda's first brush with murder was when she kidnapped a child from a wealthy neighborhood in hopes of cashing in on a hefty ransom. However, Griselda's plan soon soured when the ransom wasn't paid, concluding with her shooting and taking the life of the kidnapped child. 2 years later, at only 13 years old, Griselda's venture into crime deepened. She became involved in pickpocketing as a means of survival. During this time, she married her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, with whom she went on to have 3 kids, Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo, all before Griselda was 21 years old. Carlos, who was much older than Griselda, was alleged to be a small-time criminal, forging false documents and trafficking people across the US-Mexico border. It is believed that through this marriage, Griselda was introduced to criminal elements within her community. Learning the trade of human trafficking and document forging for herself, Griselda would quickly learn the norms and behaviors associated with a criminal career. Griselda's first marriage would eventually end in divorce. It is reported that Griselda and Carlos stayed business partners for some time, up until his death. It is alleged that Griselda had Carlos killed, while others cite a series of health conditions taking his life. Newly divorced, Griselda would not be alone for long though. Enter Alberto Bravo. Alberto also trafficked, but unlike Carlos, Alberto reportedly trafficked drugs. After some time, Griselda and Alberto's partnership would turn both personal and professional. The two would wed, and together they built a substantial drug trafficking network that would extend from Colombia to the United States, laying the groundwork for what would become Griselda's empire. Griselda's innovative smuggling methods, which notably included the use of lingerie-clad attractive women, set new standards in the cocaine trade. Having identified the demand for illicit drugs in the United States, Griselda and Alberto would relocate to New York. The two would meticulously forge a sophisticated network of smugglers and dealers to ensure seamless distribution and maintain anonymity. During this time, Griselda amped her smuggling methods beyond lingerie. Her operations were now also smuggling drugs using cargo containers, speedboats, suitcases, hollow wooden coat hangers, and even reports of a dog cage with a live dog in it. Griselda and Alberto's operations did not go unnoticed by authorities for long. In 1973, the DEA, having been aware of the influx of drugs in the streets of New York for some time, launched Operation Banshee in response. Through this operation, in 1974, 12 Colombians were charged with smuggling 20 pounds of cocaine per week into New York, including Griselda and Alberto. Griselda would be labeled as an associate in this smuggling operation, a testament to the unprecedented female leadership in this industry. This erroneous assumption would allow Griselda to go under the radar as a drug queenpin for some time. Facing these charges, Griselda and Alberto would flee back to Colombia. In 1975, Alberto would lose his life, making this a pivotal moment for Griselda. According to various accounts, Griselda and Alberto had a deadly confrontation against each other in a Bogotá parking lot, which resulted in Alberto's death. It is reported that Griselda thought Alberto was stealing money, something she would not tolerate. This incident is often cited as a turning point for Griselda, solidifying her reputation for ruthlessness and making her transition towards becoming the Black Widow, a nickname she earned for her habit of eliminating her husbands. In the aftermath of Alberto's death, Griselda, having developed a cunning and brutal persona early on, would quickly set herself apart in the male-dominated underworld. Griselda's operations would go on to grow exponentially, establishing her as a key figure in the illegal narcotics world. At some point during this growth, Griselda is believed to have been connected with the Medellin cartel. It is believed that Griselda played several pivotal roles in shaping the cartel's future, such as pioneering the drug trafficking route from Colombia to the United States, which became the main artery for smuggling cocaine into America. Griselda's operations not only fueled the Medellin cartel's rise, but it also set the stage for Pablo Escobar's domination of the cocaine trade, earning her yet another nickname, La Madrina, a counterpart title to Pablo, El Padrino. After several years in Colombia, Griselda would move her operations to Miami, where she established dominance with an unprecedented level of violence. While Griselda operated in Miami, she became known to be notoriously violent, ordering hits on anyone who threatened her empire or could potentially turn against her. This reign of terror ensured silence and loyalty, allowing her to operate in the shadows undetected. Griselda is credited with introducing the concept of motorcycle assassinations, a ride-by tactic that sprayed her victims and enemies with bullets. These drive-by shootings contributed to a period known as the Cocaine Cowboys, characterized by frequent and public acts of violence related to the narcotics trade. These tactics proved efficient for the time being. However, as Newton law tells us, everything that goes up must come down, a law that did not exclude the Black Widow. While exact figures are challenging to pinpoint due to the clandestine nature of the trade, reports estimate that at the height of her power, her network was responsible for importing as much as 3,400 pounds of cocaine per month into the United States, equivalent to around $80 million. This staggering amount of contraband didn't just bring in immense wealth, it sowed the seeds of addiction and violence in countless communities. Griselda knew that maintaining such a vast empire required more than just logistical prowess and loyalty. It also demanded total invisibility. Having learned the trade of forging documents early on, Griselda would be able to achieve this through false documentation and multiple aliases she manufactured. Through this method, she would also be able to go in and out of the United States, making it harder to pinpoint her exact location at a given time. The need for total anonymity made Griselda deeply distrustful of outsiders. She placed her utmost trust in her family, particularly her children, who were now involved directly in her operations. For Griselda, family was not just a matter of blood, but the ultimate safeguard against betrayal. In the early 1980s, Griselda moved to California, fleeing from the violent nature of the game, a complete irony, given that she single-handedly introduced such tactics. Throughout the 70s and 80s, countless communities had been affected by the cocaine epidemic and were looking to law enforcement to put a stop to the violence and influx of drugs that were flooding their streets. For over 10 years, the DEA had been tirelessly piecing together the complex puzzle of the cocaine trade's expansion in the United States, with Griselda's operations coming increasingly into focus. In hopes of getting their big break, the DEA was patient and persistent, working to identify possible informants, most of the time in exchange for leniency on charges. In 1982, the DEA would get a big break. Jorge Ayala, a trusted hitman for Griselda, found himself arrested for robbing a bank. Having been identified by the DEA as Griselda's top enforcer, he would be offered the possibility of leniency on charges he faced in exchange for him to talk. Jorge chose to cooperate with authorities. His testimony promised to be a devastating blow to Griselda's operations, offering a rare glimpse into the inner workings of her cartel and implicating her in numerous violent crimes. This testimony helped the DEA better understand Griselda's network and start building a case against her. The critical break for the DEA came in just a year later. In 1983, Geraldo Gomez, a former close associate of Griselda's operations, was serving time for drug trafficking. In exchange for a possible early release and avoid deportation, Geraldo would also choose to cooperate with the DEA. He would aid by reaching out to Griselda's inner circle and re-establishing contact with Griselda's son, Dixon. Under the pretense of aiding their money laundering schemes, Geraldo would request an interview for the job. This led to a staged in-person interview between him and Griselda, which would provide the DEA with small glimpses of her operations. From this information, the DEA would eventually pinpoint her location and execute her arrest. Griselda's arrest in 1985 in Irvine, California, marked a significant victory for law enforcement. She faced severe charges encompassing a wide range of criminal activities. It is estimated that she was responsible for anywhere from 40 to 200 deaths. Griselda was charged with conspiring to manufacture, import into the United States, and distribute cocaine by the New York courts. The prosecution's case largely depended on Carmen Caban, an ex-drug dealer turned informant. She detailed the cocaine smuggling operations from 1972 to 1975, which Griselda was said to be involved in. Griselda's defense questioned Carmen's deal with the government, her immunity from prosecution for previous crimes, the overturning of a prior conviction with government help, and financial support she received. Despite the defendant's efforts, the jury would return a guilty verdict, sentencing Griselda to 15 years behind bars. While serving her sentence, Griselda would be charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, including that of a 2-year-old boy, a wrongful hit carried out by her former hitman, Jorge, in Miami. The case against her was built on the testimony of Jorge, whose credibility would come into question due to his sexual involvement with a secretary in the prosecutor's office. The prosecution's star witness lost all credibility and led to the collapse of the case against Griselda, allowing her to avoid the death penalty. This would result with Griselda being offered a plea bargain. Griselda accepted and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, resulting in a 20-year sentence. After completing her 15-year sentence in New York, Griselda was extradited to Florida to serve her added 20-year sentence. However, after serving only 2 years, Griselda would suffer a heart attack, an event that would lead to an early compassionate release in 2004 and an imminent deportation to Colombia. In total, Griselda only served 17 years behind bars. The trials against Griselda were as complex and as tumultuous as her life. Legal proceedings were marred by allegations of misconduct and witness tampering, reflecting the difficulties in prosecuting individuals deeply entrenched in the criminal underworld. Griselda's legal team mounted vigorous defenses, often highlighting the challenges and directly linking her to the crimes due to the reliance on informant testimonies, many of whom were involved in drug trade themselves. In a twist of fate, mirroring the violence she once wielded, Griselda's life came to a brutal end on September 3, 2012, in Medellin, Colombia. The cocaine godmother, known for pioneering motorcycle assassinations, was killed herself in such manner. 2 gunmen on motorcycles executed the hit, a stark echo of the legacy of violence she helped create. The mastermind behind her assassination remains shrouded in mystery, with speculation suggesting it could be the result of numerous enemies Griselda made during her reign. Her death marked the final chapter of a life that had been steeped in bloodshed, power struggles, and infamy. Griselda's legacy in Miami and New York is a testament to the dark side of the cocaine boom, highlighting the human cost of the drug trade and the lengths of which individuals would go to dominate this illicit industry. It serves as a cautionary tale of the destructive power of ambition unchecked by morality. As the sun sets on the legacy of the godmother, we're reminded of the countless lives altered in the wake of her tumultuous reign and the ongoing battles against the forces that fueled her rise. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more crimes committed by women. Thank you for watching Closing the Crime Gap. Stay safe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.